So I believe that motivation and discipline are two ends of the same spectrum, and both are needed to make long-term progress when it comes to your health, your fitness, your physique, your performance, and so many other areas across your life. And here's why. And if you're new here, I'm Blair. I'm an online coach that specializes in helping people build lean, athletic bodies so they can do the stuff they want to do without second guessing themselves. Get my acquisition.com hat. Okay. All right. What's going on, Mosey Nation? So the main point for this video is that I believe you need to rely on both motivation and discipline. You can't just have one, because each one of them will be short-lived in its own way. When it comes to motivation, I often describe it as it's like a shit friend, right? They're there for you when it suits them. They're there for you when it's easy, but when you actually need them, they're not there. So motivation itself, when you feel motivated, like everything's easy, right? And it's like you can just do the right things. Everything feels good. You're probably, hitting good weights in the gym. It's easy to make the right decisions around your nutrition, and just everything just feels like it's in flow. But then as soon as you're not motivated, all those things that were previously easy are now a hell of a lot more challenging, and you don't have that motivation there to make it feel easy. So we can't just rely on motivation, but equally, we can't just rely solely on discipline. We need to go through phases of feeling motivated, because something that I believe in, like I've read it in various different books, whether it's discipline, willpower, motivation, whatever proxy term you want to use, we have a finite amount of that. And a good example here, and I can't remember what book it's from, but maybe somebody can put it in the comments, where they said, if there's a packet of biscuits in the cupboard, right, and those packet of biscuits are sitting in the cupboard, there's only a certain amount of times that you will say no to eating those biscuits. Unless you actually just physically throw them away and they're gone, there's a certain number of times you will say no to it, and eventually you will say yes to it, and those biscuits will get demolished, right? So that is to me, exemplifies how the willpower, the motivation we have is always going to be finite. So if you are only ever relying on discipline, eventually that's going to run out, and then you're going to regress, you're going to backtrack, and you're ultimately going to give up on whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So at different points throughout the year, at different points throughout your life, depending on what your goals are, there will be times where you can shift up the spectrum and rely more on motivation. And there'll be other times when you shift the other way along the spectrum and you need to rely more on discipline. So when motivation is high, you don't really need to have that much discipline, because it's easy to do the right things. But when motivation is low, you need to lean heavily on your discipline, because otherwise you will not do the right things, and all the right things are feeling harder to do. So you need to have a solid level of discipline in place, which then leads me to my next point, which is you need to go through periods of feeling low on motivation, because then you will never train your discipline to get the shit done that you need to do when motivation is low. If you were always motivated and everything always felt easy, and it was easy to do the right things and make the right choices and get yourself to the gym and eat the right food or whatever it is, then the one time that it wasn't easy, you'd pack it in, because you'd have no experience and you would have not developed the skill of discipline to actually do the shit you want to do when you don't want to do it. So it's important that we go through phases where motivation is high, when you don't have to rely on the discipline, but it's also important that we go through phases when motivation is low, so we can train that skill of discipline to do the stuff that you said you would do, irrespective of how you actually feel. So when should you rely more on motivation, and when should you rely more on discipline? Now, the way I see this is, if you're going through a phase where motivation is a little bit lower, so you are relying on your discipline, it's challenging, because you need to set expectations right for yourself. And for me anyway, from my personal experience and from the guys that I've worked with, when motivation is low, you're probably not going to be making as much progress, or at least making progress at the rate that you want, compared to when motivation is high. Because when motivation is high, as I've said, it's easy to do the right things. When you're relying on discipline, it's a hell of a lot harder. So you're training your body when you're relying on discipline, but more so, I believe you're training your mind as well. You're building that skill of developing your level of discipline, so that when you do have to rely on it, you can actually continuously make the right choices. Whereas the other end of the spectrum, when you are relying heavily on motivation and you feel very motivated to achieve whatever the goal is you're working towards, at that point in time, you're training your body more than you're training your mind, because your mind has it easy, right? Because you're motivated, everything feels easier. You know, making these decisions is not taking so much mental bandwidth, it's not taking so much willpower. So you're just cracking on. And in that phase, you'll probably find that you're excited to push yourself more in the gym. You're excited to maybe go the extra mile outside of the gym as well and kind of do what you need to do because you're super motivated to do so. So you're probably going to see faster results at that end of the spectrum when you are motivated, which is fucking awesome. But at the same time, you're not training your mind in the same way. So that's why I believe we need to have both. If you're only ever motivated, it's going to be short-lived and you're always going to hit a glass ceiling with the amount of progress you can make. And it's exactly the same for discipline. If you only ever rely on discipline, you have a finite amount of that and you will always hit the same glass ceiling with discipline, because you're going to run out. So we need to be able to shift along the spectrum of motivation and discipline depending on, you know, how you're feeling at certain times. Could be certain days, could be over weeks, could even be over months, right? The time of year right now, we're in November in Scotland. The clocks have just gone back. This is a very typical time when people will start struggling with motivation. So it's really important that we have, over the past year, 2 years, 3 years, however many, insert X time period, that you have trained your level of discipline so that you continue to do the stuff you know you need to do, irrespective of how you actually feel. So I want to finish this video off by just encouraging you to embrace the phase that you're in. If you're going through a phase where motivation is high, then that's fucking awesome. You know, use it to push yourself a little bit harder in the gym. Use it to, you know, go the extra mile outside of the gym to do the stuff that you know is going to help you get to your goal, because you've got that motivation, you've got that fire behind you. Do the extra stuff and embrace it, you know, send it in the gym. Do everything that you possibly can. And then likewise, if you're in a discipline phase where you're feeling a bit lower on motivation, you need to embrace that as well. And try and flip the script in your head from, oh, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling demotivated, to like, right, I need to understand that I might not be making as much progress at this point in time when it comes to my actual results, but I'm training my mind so that when I come up against a phase of discipline again, I will find it easier and easier and easier, and you're almost expanding your capacity to remain disciplined so that next time you come through a phase like that, you can last a hell of a lot longer. That's what she said. And you can push yourself mentally. Oh my God. Oh my God. So to wrap up this video, guys, remember, you need both motivation and discipline to make long-term success. You cannot just rely on one of them, because the progress will always be short-lived. There will be times, days, weeks, months, maybe even longer, that you have high motivation and you're fucking keen to get after it. And there'll be other times when you need to fall back on your level of discipline to do the stuff you know you need to do. So whichever phase that you're currently in, just embrace it and understand that highly motivated times, you will see more progress and you'll be happy to push yourself further, and understand that in a disciplined phase, you might not be seeing the same physical process, but you will be making mental progress by developing that skill of discipline. So that's why I believe you need both to have long-term success in your health, your fitness, your physique, your performance, and arguably so many other areas across your life.